On today's episode of the Atomic Comic Pile, we're going to look at Action Comics #1 from June 1938. Why? Because now it's June 2022. No, 2022. So, let's backtrack a little bit. So we'll start with this book, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster's science fiction, The Advance Guard of Future Civilization, The Reign of the Superman. This is a reprinting of the early works of Superman's creators, writer Jerry Siegel and artist Joe Shuster, both of whom were born in 1914. And these are their contributions to their high school newspaper, the Glenville Torch, from 1930 through 1932. The first story in here, written by Jerry Siegel, was published the day before his 16th birthday. And it also traces the early inspirations for them for creating the character of Superman. Then when they were 19, in 1933, they put out their own fanzine called Science Fiction. And in the third issue of Science Fiction, they created The Reign of the Superman, written by Jerry Siegel and drawn by Joe Shuster. In this case, the Superman is a bad guy, and he is bald. He is kind of like the prototype for Superman's arch-nemesis, Lex Luthor. Then we've got these two comic books, Siegel and Shuster, Dateline 1930s, issues 1 and 2. Now, Siegel and Shuster met in 1931, and they started to collaborate on stories with art. They wanted to break into newspapers for newspaper strips like Flash Gordon, and these are their early works. This is the first story they worked on together, The Interplanetary Police, from 1931. And they followed that in the same year with Steve Walsh. The rest of the stories in here are from 1934 and 1935. Bruce Verne, G-Man of the Future. Now this is the first drawing that Joe Shuster showed Jerry Siegel when he met him. This is from May 2nd, 1931, when he was 16 years old. It's called World in Future, 1980. After this, they collaborated on their first story together. Here's some of their black and white work, unfinished pencil work. Bruce Verne, G-Man of the Future. And that brings us to Detective Comics #1. Now, as I explained in earlier episodes, publisher Malcolm Wheeler Nicholson, through his company National Allied Publications, put out the very first comic book, New Fun, which changed its name to More Fun. In issue number 6 of that series, from October of 1935, Siegel and Shuster introduced their character, Dr. Occult. Now, Wheeler Nicholson's second comic was called New Comics, which later changed its name to Adventure Comics. And in issue 12 of that series, Siegel and Shuster introduced a character named Jor-El. Now this eventually became the name of Superman's father, but at this point in time, he was a science fiction detective in the future. Now, when it came time for Malcolm Wheeler Nicholson to publish his third comic, Detective Comics, he actually needed the help of some outside financiers who then bought him out and ended up buying his company, National Allied Publications, eventually changing the name of the entire company to match the first comic they put out, Detective Comics. And that's what the company was referred to, and it even had a logo in the corner of all their comics that said DC, but the company was not actually legally named DC Comics until 1976. Now, this is the first issue. This is the only time any issue of Detective Comics pre-issue 27 has ever been reprinted. This is the first issue. Issue 27 is the debut of Batman. So let's take a look inside here. Speed Saunders and the River Patrol. Oh, and I almost forgot. Them bodies was all Chinamen. Chinamen? At the morgue, Speed inspects the bodies of the Chinamen. You're right, Doc. These are all real Oriental Chinamen. Is that Gilligan? Cosmo, the Phantom of Disguise. Illustrated by Sven Elvin. It's kind of cool looking. An arrow through the head of some kind of weird native. It's interesting. So all the villains are Chinese. They're all yellow-skinned with Fu Manchus. This is not a very politically correct comic book. Bart Regan, Spy, by Siegel and Shuster. Buck Marshall, Range Detective, a Western. What in the world? Suddenly, Volk shoots out his left fist, landing squarely on Sanders' jaw. That's his right fist. Here we go. Slam Bradley, by Jerome Siegel and Joe Shuster. Oh, geez, look at these caricatures. The little pigtails and the buck teeth. Oh, my gosh. No wonder they don't reprint these old comics. Anyways, so this is Siegel and Shuster's Slam Bradley. This character is actually conceived by Malcolm Wheeler Nicholson. He told them, give me a detective who has bulging biceps and torn sleeves, and he solves crimes with his brains and his brawn, and they wrote it up and drew it up, and this character still continues today. Big old green sword right in his back. Look at this. It's like a regular guy and like a cartoon character. And like a little orphan Annie dog. There we go. The shirt comes up. Oh, gee, he's swinging him around by his pigtail. Alright, so here we go. The star of the hour. Action Comics #1. June 1938. It was actually on shelves April 18th of 1938. Now, it went for 10 cents at the time, which adjusted for inflation is about $2 here in 2022. There were 200,000 copies printed, of which there were about 50 to 100 left in existence. And in 2010, a copy of this was the very first comic to sell for $1 million. And in 2021, a copy of this got the highest amount ever paid for a comic when it sold for $3.25 million. Now, this is the 1988 50th anniversary reprint. It only reprints the Superman portion, and it's at a smaller size. The original was a larger size. The very first time this was ever reprinted was the year I was born, 1974. It was actually reprinted at a double size. It was 11 by 17, and it had a cardboard cover. The first time I ever saw it was my friend Mark had the 1983 Nestle Quick promo reprint. And there is a 2017 reprint from Loot Crate, which has the entire 68 pages completely reprinted from the original one. I'll get that in a few days, and I'll edit the footage in here so we can look at the inside of that. So, in the meantime, get out of here. All right, here it is. It arrived several days early. This is exciting. Look at this. Beautiful. Wow. This would have really jumped off the shelves back then in 1938. Look, I just love this. This light blue, this white, this red, white, and blue. Look at that. Boom, this dude lifting the car with that costume. Wow, no one had ever seen anything like this before. Let's get closer. All right, so here we go. Now, this is my first time that I'm ever going to look at anything in Action Comics #1 that isn't just this beginning Superman story. Now, this is 68 pages. So this ad, just some goofy ad from long ago. Now, we've got the Superman origin. You can see here, this is when he started out, he could leap 1/8 of a mile, hurdle a 20-story building, because he didn't have the ability to fly. They created that when they started the Fleischer cartoon about 4 years later. All right, and as you can see, the dark lines in his costume, the background, all this weird, whatever you call that, emblem, crest, something. It's not even defined. This is the very early stages. They don't even color in his boots or anything. This was drawn, intended for a black and white newspaper comic strip, which it never was sold to successfully, never appeared in the newspaper, and it was cut up and reformatted for this comic. Yeah, Superman, he fights just regular people, you know. They haven't created super villains yet. I love this. Just throw that guy in the wall. Bam! Exciting. Dude just fainted because he couldn't stab him. He broke his knife. Changing into Clark Kent. We got Lois Lane. It's all here. And there we go. The cover image. I love it. Exciting. And so begins the startling adventures of the most sensational strip character of all time. Superman, yeah, strip character. Nah. Iconic. The breaking of the chains. That was an actual trick that circus sideshow strongmen would do. They would break chains like that. They'd wrap it around themselves and flex their muscles, and that's where this all comes from. You know, this skin tight costume with the weightlifter lace up boots. That all comes from circus sideshow strongmen showing off their physiques, and the cape that probably comes from trapeze artists, maybe something like that. Yeah, look, he's walking a tight wire. Circus stuff. Oh, okay, so there we go. That was it. That's all I've ever seen before. Boom! And now, black and white. Chuck Dawson. Okay, I'm going to read this. So normally what I would do is I would read the whole thing first, and I would take notes throughout. I do a lot of research. I'd look up what is Chuck Dawson, what's his deal, what's his first appearance, is it this, how many more appearances did he have, who's the artist, who's the writer. I get all that info. That's how I've been doing these things. But you know what? I'm not doing it right now. In fact, you got access to Google. You can do it too. Look, Chuck Dawson by H. Fleming. Look it up if you care. I'm going to read this. How do you like this? What a weak punch. That's goofy. He dropped his gun. Guess it worked. And a little jujitsu. Whoa. Jiu-Jitsu in 1938. All right, back to color. Zatara, Master Magician, by Fred Gardenier. Looks like Mandrake the Magician. And DC Comics would have a Zatanna, which is a magician-based female hero. I wonder how it's all related. I bet you can find out before me, because I'm going to keep reading while you Google. Great Scott, what's that? They'd carry that on to the Superman TV show from the 1950s. That's what magazine publisher Perry White always said. Great Scott! Wait a minute, didn't Doc Brown in Back to the Future also say that? That's right, that's what I'm thinking of. Perry White always said, Great Caesar's Ghost! I think he also said Great Scott. Yeah, who cares? Here we go, first display of magical powers. He gestures with his hands, and a first aid kit appears out of thin air. It's a bizarre superpower. You know what? Boy, they made you work back then. Now it would be some kind of a healing power out of his hands. Back then, you just bring up a kit that you gotta now use. Oh look, the tigress has a tiger-striped sweater. This time you die, Zatara! These are the state police. That's what they looked like back then. They had like, what is that, like a sergeant chevron and a Canadian Mountie hat? Very good, master. Chew cut plug. I have no idea what that means. How about this? Oya ira wani rewap. Oh, it's just written backwards. You are now in my power. That's that. Now to find the tigress. It's easy. Punch him in the back of the head, the crooks are released from the spell. Yeah, easy come, easy go. I don't know if you've seen Amel and the Detectives, but if you have, that's a skrink. A few quarts of kerosene ought to brighten things up, big boy. Look at that, he's gonna burn him alive! Ooh, kicked him right in the face. Okay, so South Sea Strategy by Captain Frank Thomas. We have a text story with a couple of illustrations. You got your natives, some kind of a tropical play, a little sailboat, man overboard. Yeah, let me read it. I's a-comin', Captain Brett. And a few seconds later, Cotton Ball's glistening black face appeared above the door of the hatch. Yeah, not politically correct. Okay. Sticky Mitt Stimson by Alger. Looks like a newspaper comic strip. Hogan's Alley. Why does that sound familiar? Google it. Get me the answers. All right, The Adventures of Marco Polo, illustrated by Sven Elvin. Oh, this is like a true story type of thing. That's interesting. Wait a minute. I recorded the rest of this video last week, and there was something else illustrated by Sven Elvin. Can't remember what it was. I don't know if we've covered it or it's coming up later in this video. But you'll find out, or you already know. Moving on. Marco Polo. Marco Polo. That's not annoying at all. Oh, look, they must be speaking Arabic. It's kind of a cool illustration right there. Okay, Pep Morgan by Fred Gardenier. Pep Morgan, versatile young athlete, is fighting Sailor Sorensen for the coveted light heavyweight championship. Pop Burkett, Pep's trainer and pal, is in the fighter's corner. Sailor is managed by the unscrupulous Doc Laurie. I think we're missing some punctuation. Anyways, so we got a boxing story. Oh, here we go. So we have a black boxer. They call him Boomerang, the Wild Bushman, and they also call him the Missing Link. Come on, guys. Jeez. I know it's another time, but whoa, were we that bad? I guess so. People were, what the heck? Okay, back to black and white. Scoop Scanlon, 5-star reporter by Will Eli. Scoop Scanlon, ace reporter of the Bulletin, rouses his sleepy-eyed pal and photographer Rusty James and plans to go into action. You know, I worked with a guy named Rusty Ford. Rusty Ford. Boy, his parents had a sense of humor. Scoop cuts loose with his chopper. So a Tommy gun is called a chopper. Hey, here we go. Color again. Tex Thompson by Bernard Bailey. Another Western, I think. Nope, it's just a Texas oil baron. Hey, look, they're getting kind of experimental with the frames here. That's a first. Wow. They're trying things. The background's colored with a rainbow of fruit flavors. Real heavy black shadows. Interesting. Complete silhouette. This guy's experimental. Wow, look at that. It's like film noir. Okay, Stardust by The Stargazer. Fred Astaire. Constance Bennett. I don't know who that is. Charles Boyer. Wheeler and Woolsey. Two of Hollywood's most popular comics. I wonder if anyone remembers them today. I sure don't. Okay, here we go. Odds and Ends by Moldoff. That is Sheldon Moldoff. I went to a comic book convention a few years ago to get a picture with and an autograph with Sheldon Moldoff, the last living human being to ever work on Action Comics #1. That's what I read on the internet. I didn't know what he had done. It said he did an advertisement in this issue. I think it even said it was in the inside back cover, and this is exactly what it is. Here it is. Oh, but the story doesn't end there. You see, I went to the convention and I went to his table, and he wasn't at the table. And I asked, and everyone said, "Oh, I haven't seen him yet. I haven't seen him yet." Didn't see him all day. I went home, couldn't figure out why he wasn't there. A few days later, I found out he died the night before, and he never showed up to the convention. No one knew it. He was dead. So that was it. I didn't get to meet him. He was the last guy to have ever worked on this, and missed him by hours. Dang! And there we are, the back cover. Lots of little ads to buy stuff. So, there we go. The beautiful Action Comics #1. The very first superhero comic book ever. Ta-da! Next up, I have this Superman Archive Volume 1. This is a 1989 hardcover reprint of Superman comics issues 1 through 4 from 1939 through 1940. Those comics basically reprinted the early Superman stories from Action Comics and added in panels and bits of the story to kind of flesh it out and get you up to speed with his origin and where he's at that point in his first year of comics, and then they go off with all kinds of new stories. Take this paperback cover off. Look at this. It's a pretty cool looking book. There's the covers of issues 1, 2, 3, and 4 of Superman. Superman was a 64-page comic, and it was all Superman stories. The other comic with Superman in it, which came out the year before this, was Action Comics, and it had all kinds of different stories, which we just looked at in the footage I will edit in, or did edit in, yes. So we got that origin again, but it's got extra panels, extra story elements. They flesh out the story more, so it makes more sense. And you can see when it switches back over to the original, where it's got those dark lines on his costume, because this original art was drawn when it was intended as a newspaper strip, a black and white newspaper strip, before it was cut up and recolored and put into a comic. And so here are the newer drawings added in to flesh out the story. His cape is missing. It's missing again. His shirt is missing. So this is life on Krypton, where they're all just kind of leaping through the air. Hey, fellers! Acquiring super strength. Warning. When exercising, it is always well to remember that overstrain is dangerous. Be moderate in your exertions. You may find lifting a heavy armchair a difficult task. However, if you lift smaller weights regularly and gradually increase the weight of these objects, you'll soon find lifting a mere armchair a cinch. Superman, the man of tomorrow. All of this is very exciting. It's cool. Superman's tips for super health. Exercise regularly. Get sufficient rest and plenty of fresh air. Stay outdoors as much as possible. But above all, consume vitamin-rich food. There's nothing like cereals, milk, and fruit to give you that Superman energy. Hey, look at that. They put the S on the back of his cape. That's a first. Coming in through the window like George Reeves. I'll just take a nap on the train tracks. It's like a human and a Katzenjammer kid. Well, he's not a human. He's a Kryptonian. Shows what I know. Fantastic facts. Men once paid taxes on their beards. It's like a fake Superman, I guess. An imposter. That's all you get for the fight between Superman and the fake Superman? They could have done better than that. Acquiring super strength, muscle training. Clench your fists as tightly as possible, exerting every ounce of energy. While in this tense state, sharply jerk them in various directions. This will eventually impart to you a crushing hand grip. There we go. Now I got a crushing hand grip. Watch out. But they all have these cool pictures. Facing the tree. Oh, this is Lex Luthor. See, he started out with hair. Luthor. He didn't have a first name yet. This is his first appearance. Luthor. Attaining super strength. Boy, they're really, I guess they know their audience. You want to be strong like Superman, right? Why not? The Spectre. The Sandman. Batman. So Batman is out. The mysterious figure the Batman appears in a complete episode every month in Detective Comics. And here they are. Superman, Sandman, the Batman, Ultraman, the Spectre, and the Flash. I love Superman climbing buildings. Alright. So now we've got the Great Superman book, the complete encyclopedia of the folk hero of America. This is a book that we had in our house since I was a little kid. It came out in 1978, and it's basically an entire encyclopedia about everything about Superman from 1938 to 1965. As you can see here, it says Volume 3 of the Encyclopedia of Comic Book Heroes. This was an intended 8-volume set. Only 3 of them came out. Oddly enough, Superman was Volume 3. Volume 1 was Batman. Volume 2 was Wonder Woman. So, I'm assuming, because of the time period this came out, Batman would have been number 1, probably because of the Adam West show was like the biggest thing around that time. And then after that, Wonder Woman, because the Linda Carter show would have been new on TV around that time. And then they come out with the Superman one because the movie, Superman the movie, was in the works when this came out in 1978. Because the movie came out that year, right? Yeah, 1978. This was my favorite illustration of Batman growing up. I believe this is drawn by Neil Adams. Kultbekastim, the magic word which, when uttered aloud by Mr. Mixpatelk, has the effect of temporarily returning the mischievous extra-dimensional imp to his home in the 5th dimension. Look how awesome this is. Maps of Krypton's Old World Hemisphere and New World Hemisphere. Krypton! Before it blew up. Like Alderaan. This is how Superman takes a shower with a super blowtorch to burn dirt and stains off his indestructible costume. Awesome. And this, greatest thing ever. Look at this. The Fortress of Solitude. So cool. You know, Batman has that giant penny in the Batcave. Superman has a giant T-Rex. Wow, the second level. Whoa. Man, I got goosebumps. I remember this from being a kid, just poring over these pages. And there we go. The original cover art for the very first Action Comics #1. This is the uncolored, original black and white artwork. See the weird emblem and boots? Only appeared in this image. So here's a few other books we had in the house when I was a kid. My parents were really into Superman when this movie came out. So we have the novelization of the film, the making of the movie, Planet Krypton. So here's some more stuff we had. We have these Superman cutouts, which made this awesome 3D diorama of multiple scenes from the film. We had these Superman the movie blueprints. These were blueprints of the sets that were built for the film. I'm telling you, my parents went crazy for this movie. And we have this gallery of Superman paintings, a collector's portfolio of original art inspired by the movie and painted by Jim Dietz. It's kind of shocking how society doesn't remember just how much of an event this film was. Look at all this stuff. And we had these Power records, a full album, and a 45. And here's my lunchbox from kindergarten, Superman 2. Charlene Andrews was so impressed with this. I even have the thermos. And this little belt actually fit around my waist. Look at this. It's elastic, and best part, it has a magnetic belt buckle. Beautiful! Now this you're not going to believe. This is an actual piece of George Reeves' Superman cape. Superman from the 1950s. They cut his cape into 1,000 pieces, and this is piece number 1. In the 90s, I collected the Superman radio show from the 40s on CD, and the 3 sets came with these books. Tells all about the radio show. And I got this reprint of the original Superman novel from 1942. The artwork is by Joe Shuster, but the story is written by George Luthor, who was the script writer for the Superman radio show. And this novel really fleshed out Superman's origin. Just like the radio show had lots of elements that fleshed out his story. Like kryptonite came from the radio show. This novel brought in Clark Kent's parents, Ma and Pa Kent, lifting an anvil like a feather. And here's the book that Superman actor Christopher Reeve wrote after he became a quadriplegic. Now, I borrowed this from my friend Angie, and in turn I let her borrow my Star Wars The Phantom Menace hardcover that had also just come out. And then I went and bought this copy for myself after I read it. But after I read this book for the first time, I set it down and I went outside and I ran 7 miles. The longest distance I ever ran in my life at that time. A few years later, before he died, he wrote another book. And I bought this and read it. And I donated to the Christopher Reeve Foundation. Got this dog tag. And I was wearing it to one of my very first comic book conventions when I met an artist named Sean Aline, who was also wearing this. And we kind of bonded, and we collaborated on some art projects. His was the first Kickstarter that I ever invested in. I have some of his artwork framed on the wall. That's a story for another time, but that was about a dozen years ago. I've collected, watched, and loved all of the Superman Fleischer cartoons, the movie serials, all seasons of the George Reeves television series, Lois and Clark, Smallville, all of the Superman movies. I met many of the actors and artists. I love Superman. This is my collection of Superman Silver Age comics. I got it signed by artist Al Plastino. This is the phone book style black and white reprints where you can get a gigantic collection of the comics very cheaply. And we can juxtapose that with this from Alex Ross. Wow. Look at that. You gonna tell me Superman ain't awesome? And my girlfriend got me this book, The Superman Files. This is it's like a scrapbook of Superman's entire life put together by Brainiac 5 in the future. So you got newspaper clippings, photographs, Look at this. It's a really cool book. I love it. And finally we have this, Superman, The Complete History. That's George Reeves' costume that he wore when the show was still in black and white. It's actually gray and chocolate because the red and blue weren't differentiated enough when it was turned black and white. So they had to use these colors. Now here we go. This is the original 1933 cover to the proposed Superman comic book by Siegel and Shuster that did not sell. And they were so upset that Shuster tore up every page, except the cover was saved by Jerry Siegel and hidden away. And so it's the only one that still exists. This is 5 years before Superman actually debuted in Action Comics #1. This I like. Henry Duvall of France, famed soldier of fortune. This is a swashbuckler, kind of a Three Musketeers character. This was Siegel and Shuster's first professional comic strip. I think this is from 1935? Yeah. The first thing they ever came out with. He made his debut at the same time as their character, Dr. Occult. Dr. Occult is still in comics today, DC Comics. In fact, his very first appearance, which it's not shown here, I don't believe this is... Anyways, when he's in costume, it's like an early version of Superman's costume. It's a skin-tight blue costume with a red cape, except he has a sword. It's interesting. Smash hit strip of 1936, Superman. Look at this old proposal drawing. Still trying to sell that strip. Couldn't do it for years. 5 years they were trying to sell Superman. No one would take him. This is my favorite. This is that prototype costume. I love this. Hang on, I'll get something. Bam! Right there. Look at that. It's that crazy costume. Look, they don't even color all the way up on his boots, which is just how it was colored on the cover of Action Comics #1. They didn't color all the way up on those crazy boots. Didn't color his belt. I love that emblem. In case you're wondering, here's the Christopher Reeve version, so you can see the differences. Cool, huh? See, and Superman was like a regular height guy, regular sized man. Christopher Reeve, of course, gigantic. See, that's what I'm saying. They didn't color all the way up. Look at this. This is another early drawing trying to sell that Superman comic. This is before he has a costume. It's a great painting. This, of course, is the very first live-action Superman. He was at a World's Fair. Ray Middleton in full suit. There's actually color film of this parade of him on this float. Ancient action figure. Not really an action figure, it's just a statue. Where's your pants, man? The Fleischer cartoons. And the Superman movie serial from 1948. That's Kirk Allen. George Reeves' cape. Chocolate. TV Superman kills self. Well, not really. At least I don't think so. If you'd like to watch a movie about it, watch Ben Affleck's movie Hollywoodland, where he plays George Reeves. I recommend it. And Christopher Reeve's costume. Look at that, the old Macy's Day Parade float of Superman. Wow, it's old. And of course, the death of Superman. I remember when that comic came out. Boy, it was such big news. We all went to the comic store to get it, and the guy that ran the comic store was my brother's friend from high school, and he was standing out in the street in a full Superman costume, which was, it was kind of novel at the time because, back then, this is 1991, right? So that's, I mean, that's like 20 years before I'd ever go to a comic book convention where people are wearing cosplay, costumes and stuff. I never even heard the word cosplay before. Anyways, it's pretty interesting. He was steering all traffic on into the store to come get the Death of Superman comic. And then when you go in, his business counterpart was at the counter, the register, ringing everyone up, and he's in a suit and glasses and everything, and I remember somebody saying, "Hey man, how come you aren't in costume?" And he says, "I am. I'm in the Clark Kent persona." And that just stood out to me, the word persona. And I took the comic home, and I read it, and my dad wanted to read it, and when he got to the end of it, he said, "Wow, I'm really teared up there. They killed Superman." It was stupid. Anyways, sorry to end this video on a down note, but that's where we'll end it. Anyway, Superman's not dead. Long live Superman.
Ah!